Jedediah Stone knew the sound of a horse that wasn't his own. He knew it in the bones of his feet, a vibration that traveled up from the hard-baked earth of his homestead. 3 horses, moving at a deliberate walk, not the hurried gait of trouble or the lazy amble of a lost prospector. This was purpose. He set down the axe, its head buried in the half-split log, and wiped a forearm across his brow. The sun was a hammer in the vast blue anvil of the sky. He stood by the corner of his cabin, a structure of sweat-stained timber and stubborn will, and watched them come. They crested the low rise to the east, silhouettes against the morning glare. Not soldiers, not settlers. Apache. 3 riders sitting their ponies with the easy grace of people who were part of the landscape, not merely crossing it. As they drew closer, the details sharpened. They were women. His hand drifted, out of instinct, toward the Colt Peacemaker holstered on his hip, but he let it fall. There was no threat in their approach. It was formal, almost ceremonial. The lead rider raised a hand, palm forward, and halted her companions 20 yards from his porch. Jed's breath caught. Dust and time had blurred the memory, sanding it down to a story he rarely told himself. But he knew them. A decade older, their faces carrying the authority of years. But it was them. The 3 girls he'd found huddled in a dry wash, their family lost to a fever that swept through the mountains. He'd been just a boy himself, barely 20, pushing a small herd of cattle north. He'd given them his water, the last of his jerky, and led them for 3 days through territory thick with scalp hunters, delivering them to the edge of their own lands. He'd asked for nothing, and ridden away before they could offer it. The lead rider dismounted. She was taller than he remembered, her deerskin dress intricately beaded, her black hair bound in 2 perfect braids. She moved with a quiet power that commanded the very air around her. This was Nayland, the youngest then, the one with eyes that had watched his every move, not with fear, but with a fierce, calculating intelligence. "You are Jedediah Stone," she said. It was not a question. Her voice was low and clear, like water running over cool stones. Jed gave a slow nod. "I am." The other 2 women, her sister Iska and their cousin Tiny, remained mounted, their expressions unreadable. They too were changed, no longer frightened girls but women of standing. Their presence here, on his land, felt as significant as a mountain shifting in its sleep. "I am Nalin," she continued as if he might have forgotten. "This is Iska and Tiny. 10 winters have passed since you gave us water when we had none." "I remember," Jed said. His voice was rough from disuse. He didn't get many visitors. "A debt of honor was made that day," Nalin stated, her gaze unwavering. "It is time for it to be paid. Our chief, my uncle, has sent us. He asks that you ride with us to our camp. He has an offer for you." Jed looked from her strong, composed face to the hard, lonely expanse of his ranch. The fences he'd strung, the well he'd dug, the cabin he'd raised. Every rock and crooked post was a piece of his life. He was a man who spoke little because he had little to say and even less to ask for. A debt was a complication he didn't need. "There is no debt," he said plainly. "I did what anyone ought to have done." A flicker of something, not impatience but perhaps resolve, crossed Nalin's face. "What a white man ought to have done is not what he does. You acted with honor when you had nothing to gain. That is a rare thing. Our laws of gratitude are not so easily dismissed. Will you ride with us?" It was a test. He could see it in the challenge of her eyes. To refuse would be an insult, a dismissal of their tradition, of the very honor they sought to repay. He was a lone man against the world, but he was not without principles. He gave another slow nod. "I'll get my horse." The ride to the Chiricahua stronghold was a silent one. Jed rode his buckskin gelding, a creature as taciturn as himself, slightly behind the three women. He was a stranger in his own country, seeing the familiar mesas and canyons through their eyes. They moved without wasted effort, reading the land like a story Jed only knew by its cover. Nalin, in the lead, seemed to be the focal point of their small group, her back straight, her focus absolute. He watched her, the way she guided her pony with a subtle shift of weight, the way her eyes constantly scanned the horizon. The scared, defiant girl was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her own worth and the worth of her people. He felt a stir of respect that was entirely separate from the memory of their first meeting. Their camp, the rancheria, was nestled in a hidden valley, a place of impossible green, carved by year-round spring. It was larger than he'd expected, a bustling community of hide wickiups, cooking fires, and the sounds of life. As they rode in, a silence fell. Every eye turned to him. He was the outsider, the white man, a symbol of a world that had brought them nothing but grief and war. He kept his face impassive, his hands resting easy on his saddle horn, letting them look their fill. Nalin led him to the center of the camp, where an older man with a face like a weathered cliff sat before the largest wickiup. This was the chief, Black Hawk. His eyes held the wisdom of 1,000 desert sunrises. Nalin spoke to him in their tongue, her words flowing with respect and precision. The chief listened, his gaze fixed on Jed. When she was finished, he gestured for Jed to dismount and sit. "You are the one they call Stone," Black Hawk said in passable, heavily accented English. "My nieces have told the story of your actions for 10 years. It is a story we tell our children, to show them that a man's heart is not always the color of his skin." Jed inclined his head. "I did little." "You did everything," the chief corrected him. "You gave them life. The Apache people do not forget. We have watched you. We know you live alone. You fight no one. You take only what you need from the land. You are a man of quiet spirit." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "We offer you a place here, not as a guest, as one of us. We will give you land by the spring, a herd of the finest horses, and a wickiup will be built for you. You will be a man of rank among us. This is how we pay our debt." Jed was stunned into silence. He had expected a gift, a horse, perhaps a rifle. He had not expected a life. He looked around the camp, at the families, the warriors, the children. It was a world complete in itself, a world he could never truly be a part of. He was Jedediah Stone. He knew how to mend a fence, how to gentle a horse, how to live with the profound silence of the plains. He did not know how to be Apache. Nalin watched him, her expression unreadable. She had delivered the offer, her duty fulfilled. Now she was an observer, waiting to see what kind of man he truly was. Would he accept out of greed? Refuse out of arrogance? "I am honored by your offer, Chief," Jed began, choosing his words with care. "It is more than any man could expect. I ask for a day to consider it." Black Hawk nodded. "It is a great choice. Take your time. Nalin will show you where you may rest." Nalin led him to a small, clean wickiup set apart from the others. She laid out a buffalo robe for him. The silence between them was thick with unspoken thoughts. "Your chief is a generous man," Jed said finally. "He is a wise man," Nalin corrected gently. "He sees the world is changing. An alliance with an honest white man is worth more than 100 stolen rifles." "Is that what I am?" An alliance? You are a man who saved my life, she said, her voice dropping slightly. The rest is for the chiefs and the councils to decide. For me, the debt is personal. Before he could respond, a commotion erupted at the edge of the camp. A young warrior ran toward the chief's dwelling, shouting in Apache. Nalan's head snapped up, her body instantly tense. She listened, then turned to Jed, her eyes dark with concern. Comancheros, she translated. A small party. They were spotted tracking a herd of our horses in the northern canyon. Our warriors are gathering. Jed felt a familiar pull. Trouble was trouble, no matter whose horses were at stake. He saw the warriors grabbing rifles and bows, their faces grim. They were preparing for a fight. He was a guest, an outsider. The sensible thing was to stay put, to stay out of it. But then he looked at Nalan. He saw the tension in her jaw, the worry for her people, for their wealth and their safety. The memory of her as a young girl, fierce and vulnerable, overlaid the image of the powerful woman before him. His choice was made before he thought it through. Which canyon? He asked. Her eyes widened slightly in surprise. The Red Draw. It is treacherous terrain. I know it, Jed said. The east wall has a game trail. A man on foot could get above them, unseen. Nalan stared at him, a new light in her eyes. He wasn't boasting. He was offering knowledge. He was offering help. This was not part of the council's offer or the tribe's debt. This was him. She made a decision. Come, she said, and led him not to the chief, but to her brother, a war leader named Taza. Taza was suspicious. His eyes narrowed as Nalan spoke quickly in their tongue, gesturing from Jed to the northern mountains. He looked Jed up and down, taking in the worn boots, the simple clothes, the steady gaze. He clearly did not trust the white man. Jed didn't try to convince him with words. He walked to a patch of dusty earth and, with a stick, sketched a map of the Red Draw Canyon. He marked the main trail, the location of a small spring, and then, with a decisive stroke, the hidden game trail that climbed the sheer eastern face. He drew an X high above the canyon floor. A man with a rifle here, he said, looking Taza in the eye, can see everything. He can stop them before they even see the herd. Taza studied the crude map, then Jed's face. He saw no deceit, only a quiet confidence. He grunted a single word to Nalan, then turned and shouted an order to his warriors. A few of them broke off from the main group. He looked back at Jed. You will show us. The climb was hellish. They left the horses behind and scaled the rock face, Jed leading the way with Taza and 3 other warriors. He moved with a slow, mountain goat surety that surprised the Apache. He was no stranger to rock and high places. He tested each handhold, each foothold, his movements economical and silent. He was not trying to impress them. He was simply focused on the task. From the ledge near the top, the canyon floor was laid out below them like a map. They saw the Comancheros now, 5 of them, moving carelessly, confident in their raid. They were driving a small bunch of a dozen Apache ponies toward the canyon's narrow mouth. Taza looked at Jed, a question in his eyes. Jed simply pointed his chin toward the lead rider, then raised his Winchester. He didn't need to be told what to do. His shot echoed in the canyon, a sharp crack that sent birds screeching into the air. The Liad Comanchero threw his hands up and toppled from his saddle. Before the others could react, the Apache warriors opened fire. Their arrows hissed through the air, their rifle shots bouncing off the canyon walls. It was over in moments. The remaining Comancheros scattered, abandoning the horses and fleeing for their lives. Below, the main party of Apache warriors swept in to reclaim the herd. As they made their way back down, one of the younger warriors, moving too quickly, slipped on a patch of loose scree. He tumbled, and his leg bent at an unnatural angle against a rock. A sharp crack, followed by a cry of pain. Jed was the first one to him. The bone was broken, a clean snap of the tibia. Without hesitation, Jed shrugged off his worn leather belt. He took the warrior's rifle in his own, laying them alongside the leg as crude splints. He used his belt and strips torn from his own shirt to bind them tightly, immobilizing the limb. He worked with a quiet efficiency, his hands gentle but firm. The injured warrior gritted his teeth, but allowed the white man to work. Taza watched, his expression unreadable. When Jed was done, he and another warrior made a litter and began the slow, careful process of carrying their injured comrade back to camp. Jed returned to the rancheria not as a hero, but as a man covered in dust and another's blood, his shirt torn. He walked to the stream to wash. Nalin was there, waiting for him. She held a small clay pot and a clean strip of hide. "You are hurt," she said, noticing a long, bloody gash on his forearm he hadn't even felt, a ricochet from the fight. "It's nothing," he said. "Let me be the judge of that," she replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. She sat him down on a rock and began to clean the wound. Her touch was as efficient as his had been on the mountain, but there was a tenderness to it that spoke more than words. She applied a salve from the pot that smelled of pine and something else, something earthy and clean. They sat in silence as she worked. The sounds of the camp, a distant murmur. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. "My brother says you move like a shadow in the mountains," she said softly, not looking up from her task. "He says you fight like a man protecting his own home." Jed watched her, the way the fading light caught the high line of her cheekbones. "A man protects what's right," he said, the words a simple echo of their earlier conversation, but now they carried a different weight. She finished wrapping the wound and finally met his gaze. The mask of composure was gone. In her eyes, he saw a depth of understanding that startled him. She saw him, not the white man, not the stranger, but Jedediah Stone, the man who had saved her once with water, and again today with his quiet courage. The turn had happened. Respect, earned in dust and rock and a shared moment of danger, had bloomed between them. "The debt is paid, Jedediah Stone," she said. "By you." The next morning, the entire tribe gathered. The air was thick with anticipation. Black Hawk sat before his wickiup, flanked by his council. Nalin stood with her family, her face calm, but her hands were clenched tightly at her sides. She had no idea what he would say. After yesterday, anything felt possible. Jed was brought before the chief. He looked out at the faces watching him. Suspicion, curiosity, and from Tiksa and the warriors he'd fought alongside, a grudging respect. He felt the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. "You have had a day to consider our offer," Black Hawk said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "You have shown us your heart on the mountain. There is a place for you here, if you will have it. What is your answer?" Jed took a breath. He had spent the night staring into the fire, weighing his solitary life against the vibrant, complicated world they offered him. He knew his answer would satisfy no one, and perhaps everyone. "Chief Black Hawk," he began, his voice clear and steady. "You have honored me beyond measure. Your people have shown me a kindness I did not expect, but I cannot accept your offer to live among you." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. It was the sound of disappointment, of insult. Nalin's heart sank. I am a white man, Jed continued, raising his voice slightly to be heard over the noise. I was raised in that world. I cannot unlearn the man I am any more than you can stop being Apache. My hands built a home from the dust. My heart is tied to that piece of land. To leave it would be to leave a part of myself behind. He paused, letting them absorb his refusal. Then he took a step forward. But I will not simply ride away. I have an offer of my own. The murmuring stopped. All eyes were on him again. My ranch sits on the pass that leads into the white settlements. It is a gateway. Soldiers, settlers, hunters, they all pass by my door. I have lived in solitude, but I see now that solitude is a luxury that none of us can afford any longer. Our worlds are touching, and that touch is often violent. He looked directly at Black Hawk. I will not join your tribe, but I will be your ally. I offer my home as a watchtower. I will be your eyes and ears on the border. I will trade fairly, with no whiskey and no tricks. My land will be a sanctuary, a place where your people can come in peace for trade or for parley. I will be a guardian between your world and mine. He had their attention now. This was unheard of. A white man willingly binding his fate to theirs, not by joining them, but by standing between. It was a sacrifice of his quiet life, a declaration that would make him an outcast among his own kind. A man needs a reason for such a pact, Jed said, his voice lowering. He turned his head and his gaze found Nalin in the crowd. He looked only at her now. An alliance needs a bridge. A watchtower needs a keeper. A home needs a heart. He spoke to her, though the whole tribe listened. Nalin, I ask you to be that bridge with me, not to leave your people, but to build this new place with me, a place that is not mine and not yours, but ours, together. The shock was absolute. He had refused their offer only to make a bolder one. He had not asked for a wife to cook his food and warm his bed. He had asked for a partner, an equal, to build a future he had just invented. He was placing the final, most crucial decision in her hands. All eyes turned to Nalin. Her sister Iska put a hand on her arm, but Nalin stepped forward, away from her family, to stand alone in the space between the white man and her chief. Her heart was a drum against her ribs. He was offering her a life she had never imagined, a life of impossible difficulty and breathtaking honor. He was not asking her to become white, but asking to build a new world alongside her. She looked at Jed, at his steady eyes, his torn shirt, the bandage on his arm that she had tied herself. She saw the lonely ranch, and she saw it not as a place of solitude, but as a place of beginning. She turned to her uncle, the chief. She spoke in her own language, her voice ringing with a strength and clarity that left no room for doubt. I will be this bridge, she declared. I will go with the man called Stone. His honor will be our shield, and my heritage will be our guide. We will build this place between our worlds. Black Hawk looked at Jed, then at his niece. He saw the strength in both of them. He saw not an ending, but a new, uncertain, and powerful beginning. A slow smile touched his weathered face. He gave a single, solemn nod. Jedediah Stone had not given the answer they expected. He had given them something far more valuable, a future they could build together. And as Nalin walked toward him, leaving one world to create another, he knew he was no longer a man alone.